Hey, welcome back to my channel Endless Pages. I'm Liv and welcome to today's video, which is my reading wrap up for the month of June. June was quite a successful reading month for me, although I was meant to be participating in Adventure-a-thon, which was run by Kirsty from K-Beth Bookish. I don't believe I read a single book off my Adventure-a-thon TBR, which is kind of disappointing because I did want to be active and I did want to be participating in Adventure-a-thon to support Kirsty and her first readathon, but I just knew halfway through the month that just wasn't going to happen and I had to give up on it. So hopefully in potential future rounds I can be more active and more supportive to Kirsty, but yeah, I knew that I had to give up on it, that it wasn't going to happen. But I did read 6 books, which is one above my usual average for a month, and I did read the 2 kind of compulsory reads that I had to read, and I read quite a few queer books as well for Pride Month, so I'm still counting this month as a success. The first book I read in the month of June was The Darkness Outside Us. This is by Elliot Scrafer, I believe. This is a young adult spacey kind of book. I have never had like such an opinion change on a book before. Like, I've never done such a 360 on how I'm feeling about a book. This is like about kind of set in this world where, you know, typical planet screwed and humanity is looking to the stars to continue on our journey, I guess. And yeah, so there was this person that was the first settler of this planet called Titan, and they have set off a distress signal, and no country on Earth left kind of has the resources or the ability to send like a ship themselves. So these 2 enemy countries, in my mind they're kind of meant to be like America and Russia. That's kind of the vibes I was getting. I could be wrong, but that was the comparison that I had in my head when I was reading this. They kind of team up to join together to build this rocket together and send like one from the American-like country and one boy from the Russian-like country up in space together to go and deal with this distress signal. Ambrose is one of the boys on this ship and he wakes up with like no memory of the launch. The other boy on the ship has barricaded himself away from him. It feels like something's not quite right on this ship. It feels like people's been on there, but Ambrose is determined for this rescue mission to go right because it's his sister that was the settler of Titan that has set off the distress signal, and nothing's going to get in his way of him getting to his sister, and it's about them having to discover this big secret about what's kind of really going on. So the first 100 pages of this book, I was literally about to DNF it. Like, I was like, I'm bored, I can't do this. I was so annoyed and I was like, I really don't want to DNF the first book of the month. Like, this is so hyped, I don't understand why. And then I hit a certain point in this book where I became obsessed. So how do I say this without spoiling? Like, I guess I can say in that blurb that says like, there's a secret on this ship, and I got to the point where our 2 boys kind of figure out what's actually going on and what's this big secret that the ship's kind of hiding from them. And then the realization, the book just did this sudden turn and I became absolutely obsessed. As soon as our 2 characters figure out what's really going on, and you kind of connect with them more there because you go through almost like the stages of grief with them coming to the realization of the situation that they're stuck in alone on this ship with just each other, 2 strangers from enemy countries. And the romance in this book is just like absolutely bloody freaking adorable and beautiful, because you watch them deal with the news in different ways, I'll just say, and despite their different reactions time and time again, you watch them fall in love and over, and you watch them connect over and over, and you watch them switch roles and become supports for each other over and over, and it's absolutely beautiful and absolutely devastating. I just feel like I haven't read a relationship like that in a while. Like, not only did they have this intense, lovely sexual like attraction to each other, but the boys also had this beautiful like emotional connection, and they knew when to they just like learnt really well to read the other and when to support when to kind of switch roles in terms of like who's taking charge, who's being the one that's okay with the situation, and who's being the one that's having the day where they're like, you know, having a bit of a breakdown, like, you know, rightfully so. And I didn't feel like, despite the length of the book and despite the situation, I didn't feel like it was insta-lovey, because they really worked through, I guess, the biases and stereotypes that they thought about each other, because their countries were like, you know, enemies. And I just feel like they really knew when to push, when to support. They were just like so in tune with each other and really like got to know one another. And watching that happen over and over and over in such different shapes and forms was absolutely devastating, but beautiful and hopeful at the same time. I think it was also a really good balance between the romance and the plot. I didn't feel like the romance completely took over. I feel like the plot helped drive the romance and vice versa. So it was a really good balance of their situation versus focusing on their romance. So I appreciated that. Once I got through like 150-ish pages, I absolutely flew through this book. Absolutely loved it. I'm giving it 4 stars only because of that first 150 pages where I was feeling that way. If I was just basing it on page 150-ish onwards, it would be 5 stars. I'm only giving it 4 stars because of that first. I might even change my mind and go up to 4.5. I don't know. I'll let you know if I change my mind, because like I want to give it 5 stars, but I know I can't because I didn't like the first 150 pages. Or maybe I was just too impatient. I don't know. Yeah. Next up, I read Radio Silence by Alice Osman. This is my first Alice Osman outside the Heartstopper series, so that was very exciting to actually begin on her novels. This one is about a girl called Carries, and Carries is like an academic queen. She's a study machine. She has a plan for her life. She wants to do really well in school and go to a good uni, etc, etc. And then she meets this boy called Aled, who she really feels like for the first time she can be 100% herself around him. And then there's kind of something happens that's between them, kind of breaks their trust, and she's forced to kind of confront a secret from her past about why this girl called Carries disappeared. So this book is pretty much about identity. I really loved this book. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. So I don't know if this is going to set me off in a little bit of a mini rant, but something this explored that I really liked was about what is seen as being like successful after school, because our main character Frances is like determined to get into a good school because that's what she thinks she has to do and that's what she thinks she wants to do. And mini rant, but I kind of related to this not being a study machine and getting into good uni, because I was not academic at all and I'm still not. Got dumb brain. Anyway, yeah, so I feel like I kind of, in my high school, and it could be just a my high school thing in Australia, but I feel like it's not just my school. I feel like a lot of schools in Australia do this. High schools, when you're like year 11, year 12, and like school has got you thinking about, you know, what you're doing after school, because your HSC is coming up, which is like HSC. I feel like most of my viewers are Aussie, but if you don't know, it's like your final set of exams. You do one for each subject and you get like an average mark, and then depending on that mark, universities say like you need like, I don't know, like 80 to get in, and then yeah, based off your mark you can get into different uni degrees, if that makes sense. Anyway, yeah, so I feel like when these schools try to help you kind of explore what to do next, they don't really show you the actual like options that are out there. My school in particular, they just said, like, brought in like, here's the big 5 unis and here's the courses they offer. And I remember sitting through those courses, like through those sessions, being like, I can't get into any of this, like this is not options for me. And I just kind of chose a degree that I could get into, and I panicked and I chose one. I feel like schools, I think it's like from the perspectives of schools as well, they're like, we want our students to look good and get into good unis, so we're going to show them the good unis to get into, so and be like, hey, look at our students, look at what they accomplished. But they don't actually show you the wide variety of options there is for starting a career outside of school. And that's what a lot of these characters talked about these books and kind of helped Frances come to terms with in this book, is that there's more options than university. In Australia there's like TAFE, which, you know, is just like a trade school kind of thing. I think the best comparison I could make is like community college kind of thing. And yeah, what I liked about this book is that it helps show you that there's so many options to being successful in life and so many different pathways to be successful in life. You don't just have to go to one university to be successful. And I just appreciated that because I wish I had have known that at that age as well. Because I mean, I did go to university and I don't regret it. Like, I'm happy I can say like I have a bachelor's, blah blah blah. But I appreciate the sentiment of, yeah, you don't have to go to uni to be successful. And I think it's kind of like toxic because academics is not for everyone. Everyone learns in such different learning styles, and the schools test you in one particular style, and if you don't learn that way, you get bad marks because that's not how you learn, or that's not how you, yeah, that's not your learning style, and that doesn't apply to all students. So I really liked that sentiment. Sorry, what a complete like random topic, but I appreciated that in this book. I liked the exploration of identity in this book, which I'm assuming is a common theme in Alice Osman's works. I liked that it showed the different ways within the LGBTQIA plus community people like to express or not express their identity, like how some characters in this book preferred labels and some characters in this book didn't like labels. I liked that our main character in the end, it was kind of spoilery but not really, kind of in the end was like, no, I don't need labels, I am who I am, I like who I like, and that's just me. And I thought that was really beautiful and really moving, because she kind of not struggled but kept it to herself for a lot of this book, and she had these thoughts of like, that's just who I like I don't need to really label on that, that's just who I am. And I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And then we had other characters who preferred to have a name or like a label for their identity or their sexuality, and they liked that, they preferred that, they found comfort in that. So I thought that that was really beautiful. I liked that the main character of this book was a big ass nerd. That was very fun. And she listened to this podcast that's kind of compared to like, it is compared in this book, compared to like Welcome to Night Vale, kind of mystery around it. It's called, what's it called? Radio City. Radio City? How could I forget already? I'm filming this well into July. Radio City, I think it was called, yeah. And how it showed how pieces of media and fandoms can bring comfort and a sense of belonging, because I really do, finding a piece of work that you absolutely love and are obsessed with and love reading about and making fan art or looking at fan art, yeah, that sense of belonging and comfort it can bring, especially at that kind of teenage age where identity is terrifying and school friendships are terrifying and everything's, you know, changing and you're growing and trying to find out who you are. Having that thing that you can watch or listen to every week or every day, staying the same and being there for you, I appreciate that. I can relate to that. Finding comfort in something that you absolutely love and being part of a community that all loves that as well. It's also explored like high school friendships and how, when I was telling you the blurb, I was talking about our main character and how she found someone that she could be completely herself was. It really explored well kind of female friendships and how you kind of change who you are, like to kind of mold in and fit in, like not all the time, but I feel like sometimes you do change a little bit of who you are depending on who you're around. And I appreciated that she found a friend that she could 100% be herself around, and that she kind of found her worth and found people that would appreciate her for who she found, someone at least, a couple of people by the end, that she, that valued her, that, you know, she didn't have to hide or kind of be a chameleon or dress differently. Like, she was fully, by the end of the book, so confident in who she was and what she liked and how she dressed, and it was quite sweet. The only thing I'll say about this book in a negative is that some moments were really cringy. There were some pop cultural references that I agree people say, like, it doesn't work if you're reading this in the future and you read it and you're like, that's not relevant anymore. There were some cringy, silly moments, but that's probably just because this is a YA and I'm not a young adult. I'm, you know, 24, going on 25. So of course there's going to be moments in this book where I find a little bit cringy, but there weren't like enough that I was like, you know, always like ew, cringy. There was just a couple of occasional moments where I was like, ooh, you've really aged the book with that reference, or that's kind of a cringy reference, or that's kind of a cringy moment. But, you know, not enough that I was like affected by it or wanting to put it down because of that. This was a beautiful exploration of identity. I gave it 4 stars only because of like some cringy moments, but other than that, I thought this was beautiful. Alice Osman strikes again. This is my second Alice Osman, well, you know, counting all the Heartstopper as one. This is my second time reading Alice Osman, and yeah, we're 2 for 2 so far. Next up, I read The Internet's Favourite Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I hated this book. I hated this book with every fibre of my being. We read this for Reading with Merbs Discord group Merbs Bitches, like, which I will of course pop in the description below. It's a good time if you're not already part of it. I gave this 2 stars. It was atrocious. So I'm not going to talk about it in this video because if you haven't seen, I did a separate video reviewing this book. I will pop it up here if you want to go check it out. It is full of spoilers, so please don't watch it if you are planning on reading this book or if you don't want spoilers of this book. But to summarize what I said in this video in a non-spoilery way, this is one of the cringiest things I've ever read in my life. A new adult book that reads like a young adult or like a Wattpad fan fiction. This was atrocious. I hated every second of this book, and this will be unhauled and get this out of my collection. Next up was Burn Down, Rise Up by Vincent Torrado, and this was a letdown. I'm so disappointed by this book. I'm so disappointed I didn't like this book more. This is a young adult book. We follow Raquel. She lives in the Bronx, and for the last year a lot of people have been disappearing, and no one really knows why. The police aren't really doing anything about it. And then our main character Raquel, her crush Charlize, Charlize's cousin goes missing, and at the same time Raquel's mother just suddenly goes down with this like really mysterious illness, and Raquel thinks the two might be connected and starts to help Charlize kind of look into her missing cousin, and they discover these people are playing this game called the Echo Game, which is kind of making people disappear underneath the city, and Raquel and Charlize have to play the Echo Game if they want to find and save their missing loved ones. So that's the basic premise of this book. It was such a letdown. Like, I thought the premise was so cool, like the mysterious Echo Game, and it has like the rules on the back, and I thought it was going to be like creepy and like fast paced. I felt that, I don't know, like majority of this book was just like unnecessary, like not unnecessary, but just like filled with scenes that were not needed and didn't move the plot forward at all and didn't help like accelerate the plot. I mean, they did do a little bit investigating into the Echo Game, but I feel like it was not much. I don't even remember the kind of scenes that I was reading like up until the like main big finish of them playing the game and them saving everyone. Like, that felt really rushed because it was such a small section of the book at the end, and we'd spent all this time just doing nothing, that the ending and the, you know, meant to be super fast-paced scary moment of them, you know, trying to survive and win and get out of the Echo Game was just like, it fell flat and it was really rushed, and they seemed to, I don't know, not go through that much and just kind of survive and get out, and that was it. What I will say that I appreciate this book, and I think this is why I'm giving it 3 stars and not 2, was the great way it used the plot and the urban legend of this game to discuss the history of racism and race within the Bronx. And some people word it well. They say like this book just kind of feels like a love letter to the Bronx, and I appreciate that I was learning so much about the Bronx through kind of flashbacks to the characters' families and their experiences and their childhoods, and the awful racist incidents that happened in the Bronx. So I think that was literally the part of the book that I enjoyed the most, learning about this history, more than the actual plot and urban legend itself, because so yeah, the urban legend of the Echo Game, you like get it, basically like you get on a train before 3 AM and then you flip a coin to decide what direction to go, and then you do this chant, and then you're not allowed to end the journey before 4 AM. If you do, you will become part of the, you know, the journey in the game forever. So yeah, they like, we need to go into the Echo Game to defeat it, blah blah blah. And this book was so confusing. I feel like there's so many unanswered questions, and I looked up if there was going to be a sequel, and like there's no sign that this is like, you know, you'll get more answers about the Echo Game in the sequel. I feel like this book just kind of wrapped up, and I I was confused. I was like, okay, are we not going to explain what just happened there? Are we just going to move on? Like, what happened? Like, who is behind this Echo game? I understand the point that it's like set in parts, like in areas with like dark histories, and it was set in the Bronx, and the kind of the theme was around her seeing visions of the fires in the Bronx and the treatments and the landlords and their racism within the Bronx. I can appreciate that, and I like that. I thought that was cool that it was tied to that dark part of history. But what's behind the Echo game? What's the force behind it? We didn't get any answered. Why was there centipede creatures? Like, these, like, there was these, like, creatures in the games, and they were, like, infecting people. Were they just, like, I don't know, were they controlled by someone? Did they just come with the territory? Like, they didn't answer anything. So this book just wrapped up, and that's it. And I have no idea what's behind the Echo game, like, why it chooses its locations. Are they all linked, or are they all separate? Like, are they all being controlled by one force, or are they just kind of popping up in places where they're drawn to, like, the dark history or bad events? Like, I don't know, and none of those questions were answered. What did the centipedes have to do with anything? There was like a little lesbian romance in this book that I thought had its really cute moments. I just feel like it was kind of, again, rushed, and I mean, maybe a little insular-y. Like, they were like friends, and then they were like, hadn't talked for a while and started to chat again, and I just feel like it was very quick and kind of a bit insular-y. There was cute moments that I did appreciate, but they barely spent any time together in this book. Like, barely had any scenes together after, like, they had like 2 or 3 scenes together, and that's it. And I was like, okay, well, there's not much of a romance there. So yeah, like I said, I'm giving this book 3 stars because of the way it discussed the history of the Bronx, and that was really well done, and I found that really interesting, and I would like to read up myself and learn more about that now, and I like that it has made me want to learn more, and yeah, it's encouraged me to educate myself more around the history of the Bronx, so that's why I'm giving it 3 stars. And I'm giving it 3 stars because the premise was so cool. Like, the idea of this urban legend trapping people in this, like, train game where you can't get off the train, like, that sounded so cool, and the premise was so cool. It was just the execution of that premise that was such a letdown. 90% filler garbage, super rushed ending, slow paced, no answers. I'm so disappointed by this book. So disappointed. I wanted to love it. Next up, I read Dark Rise by C.S. Beckett. This is the first book in the Dark Rise series by the Aussie author. This book was for the Last to Read book club's book pick. I will tag that in the description below. It is run by Mel, Ellie and Lana, who I will also tag in the description below. It's a fun time. Yeah, so this was the first time that I was reading for this book club, which is very exciting, and what a book to start me off. This book is this world where the old magic of the world no longer exists. It's set in like current, like, London 1800s, which was such a cool setting, and the only kind of people that remember these old magic in those times are these people called stewards, and their duty is to keep vigil and wait in case this evil person called the Dark One decides to rise again. And then we follow one of our main characters, Will, who's 16 years old. He's on the run from the people that killed his mother, and then one of his mother's old, like, staff member people come up to him and was like, gave them this medallion. They're like, go find the stewards, like, they'll know what to do. And then Will is kind of dragged into this battle between good and evil, and he has to help kind of fight for the light and stop the world from being destroyed by the Dark One, who's like attempting to rise again. Yeah, so this book was so fast paced. You like jumped straight into the action. The opening boat scenes were so cool. Like I said, like 1800s London setting, which was really cool as well. This book has multiple POVs, which I adore. I adore. As soon as I like turn to the next chapter and it was a different perspective, I was like, I'm gonna love this book. But yeah, you really jump straight into the into the action. Yeah, multiple POVs, like I said, and the world building was really cool. Like, the world of the stewards and their laws and their traditions was so cool. and the soldiers called the remnants. Like, everything in this world building was so creative, so cool, just this amazing fantasy world. This book seemed kind of dark for a young adult. Like, we had so many moments where you just felt like the utter hopelessness of the characters and what a daunting and intimidating this task is, trying to go up against the Dark One and his followers. And I liked that feeling that you felt for the main characters of hopelessness and like the dread at the task ahead. And I liked the, I guess, the character of our main people, like in terms of their ability and their morals to keep fighting despite the hopelessness they felt, and despite the situation they were in, they still wanted to fight for what was right, to save the people they love and to save the world. And I liked that kind of challenge and the challenges that they were faced with, and that feeling of hopelessness that they fought through. I also like this book because, like, oh my god, I did not see half of the stuff that was happening. Like, holy moly, like the ending and the massive twist in this book took me completely by surprise. Like, I did not see it coming at all, like completely shook. What a way to finish up a book, and what an ending. Like, it was absolutely brilliant. Like, holy moly, what an ending. And the final line of this book was so good. I was like completely shook. I cannot wait to get my hands on the sequel now because of that ending. There was so many like unique and cool characters in this book, and I liked that we saw perspectives from both sides and different players in this game. For most of the book I was like, I know this is queer because like it was picked for Pride Month, but like, who's queer in this book? Like, I spent the whole book like trying to figure out who was queer, and I was like, am I reading too much into this scene, or those characters just have some chemistry? So I thought that was really funny that I spent most of the book being like, who's queer? And then I got towards the end and I was like, we're running out of time, like, please tell me. One of my favorite characters in this book was a character called James. He's my new fave, like, book boy. Like, I found his character absolutely fascinating. I loved getting to know him more and learning about his story, and he just had this chemistry with this one particular character that was just like, oh my god, out of this world. And the twist at the end just like made that even more like, holy shit. And I really hope we get to explore that relationship more, because like, I think they're the queer characters, but oh my god, that was, their scenes that they had together was like, oh, the tension was just amazing. I'm so excited to see what happens in the sequel. We had some interesting things happen to our main characters that I can't wait to see how that changes the dynamic of their relationships and their character, and if that changes them, or yeah, I'm very intrigued. I'm very excited to see the dynamics of the relationships in the sequel as well. This book was so cool. Like, the world building was amazing, the magical elements were so cool. This book was dark and devastating, and that typical like plot of when our main characters are faced with this overwhelming sense of hopelessness, they still fight for what's right, and I love the moral behind that. And yeah, the world building was really cool. 1800s London was a sick setting, so I gave this 4.5 stars because like, it was so good. The final book I read in the month of June was Of the Wild by Elizabeth Wham. This was for Wren from Reading with Wren's Queer or Not book club. This is the first month that this was run by Wren, and it's such a fun book club. I unfortunately can never make the live shows because they're during my shifts, but I still like to participate and read the queer books, and I can always watch the live shows back, which I still need to do actually. Anyway, yeah, so the pick for this month was Of the Wild. This is about Aries, who's a shapeshifter, and he takes humans from our world that he hears their cries for help, like they're either like unwanted by their families or not treated properly or unloved, and he takes them to raise them in the wild as his own, and they live in this kind of tree that protects them. And when the children are brought back to the wild, they kind of soak up the wild and start growing like feathers or like teeth, or you know, something that's got a little bit of the wild in them. And it's about Aries kind of raising all of these children and giving them the love that they deserve and weren't going to get in their families. But the magic is kind of running dry, and the dangers of the wild are creeping closer and closer. And then our main character meets this guy, I can't remember his name, was it William? yeah, William, this human stranger that is a new arrival on the woods and could be Aries' hope for protecting his family. This book was absolutely beautiful. This was basically about Aries and his children and this new human Will who's a bit older, and Aries is kind of preparing Will to continue on for him and to, as a, you know, a new way to protect his children. And this book was like absolutely beautiful. Aries was this beautiful character that his goal in life was to raise these children, to give them the love that they were never going to get, and he kind of felt their calls and their cries for help and would bring them back and raise them to live kind of wildly. And we're surrounded by siblings that love them and surrounded by so much love in the wild. I do agree with a little bit of the criticism that there was like something like 22 kids or something. I can't remember the exact number, but too many kids to remember. And you know, they focused on some more than others, but because there was so many, I feel like they weren't able to give them all like personalities, and that kind of made them lack a little bit. So I feel like I understand why he has so many, but I do feel like it was a little bit overwhelming and hard to remember names and hard to remember them because there was so many of them. That would be my like only criticism of this book. Please quote me if I'm wrong, because I didn't watch the live show, but I also appreciate the representation in this book. I believe Aries is kind of meant to be asexual. There's just some lines that they say that kind of give me that vibe. I could be wrong, but if I'm right, I do appreciate that rep. There's also rep with our human William, who was transgender. So this book had lots of great rep that was just, you know, very encouraging to see in a book. I really liked Aries and William's dynamic. What I thought was beautiful is that, you know, this whole book, Aries is struggling to keep the magic going because he's, you know, using all of his magic to protect his family, and he's so protective and so selfless in that manner that his whole life revolves around these children and his kids. And he brings William in, and William is obviously was in an unsafe or unloved environment himself, but he's a bit more grown up and he's lived through it, and he spends his time kind of giving William the, I don't know, encouragement and discouragement of these bad thoughts that he has himself that probably no one's ever told William in their life. And I feel like that was really beautiful. And Aries spends a lot of the book just being so patient and so angry, like on William's behalf about the thoughts that he has about himself, and he's just so patient and so loving and just gives William so much encouragement and validates him. And I thought that was really beautiful to read. Despite William still healing, they were still so observant of Aries and realized how selfless Aries was and realized what was causing like this issue with the magic. Like, I thought that was really good, despite William still healing themselves and dealing with their trauma and gaining their confidence back. And, you know, they were still so observant and able to heal Aries as well. So I liked their dynamic, that they were both so in tune with each other, I guess, and so able to help each other in different ways. And William was able to help Aries learn to look after himself as well, because he just spent all of his time looking after the kids. There was no one there to look after him, or, you know what I mean? Like, they were just like, they were so right for each other and were able to heal each other. And you saw the way that the children and William gave strength to Aries, even though that he was like the one looking after them. I'm not describing it well, but this book was whimsical and beautiful, and there was so many beautiful quotes that I took about you know, your found family. It was beautiful. I gave this book 4 stars. I don't think I've described it well at all, or I've been able to verbalize how I feel about this book, but it was whimsical, it was beautiful, about healing and identity, and it was just, it was so good. 4 stars. Those were the 6 books I read in June. I had a damn good reading month. I was very happy with how many queer books I read for Pride Month. I obviously should, I shouldn't have to be like purposely just reading, you know, queer books in Pride Month. I should make an effort to make sure that my TBR continues to be this diverse each month because I found so many amazing diverse reads this month that I just had such a good time reading. Overall, I'm really happy with what I read this month. We had one 2-star and one 3-star. Other than that, like, the other books were absolutely great, and I had such a beautiful time reading this month, and 6 books is pretty good for me. Let me know in the comments below, what was your least favourite read of June? Mine was definitely Fourth Wing. Anyway, I'll shut up about that book now. As always, all my social media links are in the description below. Give this video a like if you've enjoyed my wrap up, and subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content. I will see you in whatever the hell I post next. Bye!